Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of I2I Live, where we get together every single Monday night and we talk about what's going on in the world of Disney news, whether that's Disney parks, Disney movies, Disney Plus, Disney this, Disney that. We talk about it here on our weekly roundup show. So thank you for joining us, whether you're watching this on the replay or you're watching this live. And that's the cool thing about this. This is live. So I want to hear from those of you that are out there and hear your perspectives and what you have in mind in terms of the topics we talk about here tonight, but also just in general, because we just love to hang out with you guys on a weekly basis here. So tonight we got something extra special. As you can tell from the markers that are up on the top of my screen here, I'm trying a different system tonight. So different opening. I don't have my cue cards that I normally have for all of you since I'm testing this system out. So you'll have to bear with me on that tonight. But we also have a special guest, somebody that I have gotten to know in the Disney community very well. He's a pretty cool dude, and he has a podcast. He is also starting out in the YouTube space as well, so I want him to plug a little bit of that tonight. That is my friend, Mr. Connor Brown, and I'm going to bring him into the stream right now. Connor, say hello to the folks.
Hello to the folks. How you doing, Kyle?
Well, welcome, buddy. I appreciate you being willing to hop on our channel here and just hang out with us a little bit tonight.
Absolutely. And, luckily, we have a couple things to talk about tonight, I think.
I guess we can find a few things to, ramble on about in this one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, let me say to at least one person I see familiar popping here, Captain Akron 27. Nice to see you, my friend. As always, folks, as you pop in here, please do make sure you smash that like button. And then if you feel like it as well, share it out with a friend, because it's always more fun when we have lots of people to hang out with here tonight. So what Connor was alluding to is the plans that were announced for Walt Disney World and their brand new reopening protocols, ideas, and implementations that we're going to probably try to wrap our heads around. And before we get into that, though, Connor, you can see there below his name, he's got WDW Opinion about. Why don't you tell people a little about what you do?
Absolutely. So WDW Opinion, it's a blog, it's a podcast. Like Kyle said, I'm dipping my toes into the YouTube space as well. A little bit about me. I'm like to say I was born with Disney in my blood. My mom did the college program back on the day. She actually worked on the greatest ride around the Tomorrowland, People Mover. And when I found out that you could work at Disney World, I knew I had to do that. Yeah. So after college, I was able to do the Disney college program as well. I worked front desk at the Yacht and Beach Club resorts, which was very cool. And then I shifted over to the Magic Kingdom, where a million diamonds shine. And I worked in the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. So two totally different areas in Walt Disney World, but I had a lot of fun. After my time was up, I had to come back home to Maryland, put my marketing degree to work. But I always, felt, gosh, I still need to share my passion about Disney and still need to share all these opinions I have on the place. And when I was working there, I noticed, gosh, there's no one right way to go about a Disney World vacation, right? There's so many different things you can do. It's its own city, so there's no one right way to do that. So that's kind of why I started WDW Opinion, because I wanted to gather all these information, all these opinions from people who go time and time again, for people who even go for the first time. And I wanted to, help people plan for and daydream about their next perfect Walt Disney World vacation.
You've been practicing that pitch, haven't you?
Times in the mirror every morning.
Oh no, I love it though. See that I love that you have that story, and that's what Walt Disney World and the company is about anyway, is having the right story down about what you're about. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it's about Walt Disney World, but you're about telling your opinions through story. And so I like that you have the story to tell about your family, their history with the company, and then now your history of the company. You even wrote a book as well, my friend.
I did write a book. So my whole thing with where I worked in Walt Disney World at front desk, right? So checking people in, checking people out at the Yacht and Beach Club Resort, and then working in attractions at the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I was so taken aback because basically how it worked was on a Monday was my last day at Yacht and Beach Club working front desk. And then the next Monday was my first day working at Mine Train in Magic Kingdom. And it was so different. Even though it was only a couple miles away, it was Everything was different, from how you showed up to how you went about your day to the kind of breaks you would have. So I always thought, man, I would have loved to have read about these stories, about what it was like working at these two distinct places in Walt Disney World before I worked there. That was kind of what I was looking to do. So from Yacht Club to Diamond Mine, that's my book. If you go to WDWopinion.com, you can learn more about that. But that has a lot of, inside secrets about what it's like being a cast member, at the Yacht and Beach Club, and then at one of the most popular attractions in the world.
See, I love hearing perspectives from people that have worked in the company, because, for some people, I think that would ruin the magic a little bit, but it doesn't seem to have done that for you at all.
No, it's only really enhanced it. I've grown a greater appreciation for cast members. They're, in many ways, the unsung heroes of the day-to-day in Walt Disney World. But I think just the operations of the whole place, it's 47 square miles, right? It's twice the size of the island of Manhattan. They have their own energy plants. They have their own water treatment facilities. They have so many gigantic things and infrastructure that when you start to work there and you realize, wow, all of these moving pieces have to be in place in order for the magic to happen. When you go back as a guest after being a cast member, you just have such a greater appreciation for every single detail and all the operations behind the place.
That's pretty awesome there. I'm jealous of you in many ways, but I'm also not jealous of you in many ways, because I know some of the headaches you probably had to deal with. But I know it all came with the territory, and you were happy to deal with it as well.
Those are easy things to laugh about now, but in the moment, yeah, it can be stressful. It's not always 100% magic when you're working down there, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, you definitely want to go check out his podcast, WDW Opinion. And I told this to Connor myself, and I'll say it here publicly. I have listened to tons of Disney related podcasts, and I've dropped a tons of Disney related podcasts, not because I hated them or something. It's just I don't have time for them. There are a select few that I keep in my queue, and theirs is one of them. But it's so unique, and it's like so, I don't know, it's just different. And that's why I have to get their opinions on WDW Opinion. So you want to check that out. You also want to check out his YouTube channel, and we'll let Connor share that a link. Maybe, I don't know if we can do that on here, to that at the end of this. So you can go check out his YouTube channel and obviously his book as well. So plenty of content out there for Connor, for you to get to know Connor. But let's talk a little bit about Disney World. First impressions on the opening plans for Walt Disney World, Connor.
So I don't know about you, Kyle. I had the Orange County press conference. I don't know what do you want to call it, like the board approval, whatever. Had it playing up on YouTube, even though I was supposed to be doing my normal job. I just couldn't, not do it. Yeah, job. I like to call it the hobby that they pay me to do. But a couple things. First off, I don't want to laugh at SeaWorld, but I just think it was kind of funny that the CEO of the entire company, like no matter where SeaWorld is and Busch Gardens and all that, he was the guy presenting it. And then it was just, a vice president from Disney World. But that's besides the point. First big takeaway has to be when Jim came on from Disney World, he said, we're opening July 11th and then the 15th, staggering. I initially heard June 11th, June 15th, thinking in my mind, they're going to go with SeaWorld. They're going to go with Universal, who are opening around that June timeframe. Universal is opening at the end of the week, June 5th. So then I was like, wait a second. Did he say July? Double backed. Yeah, he said July. At first, I was like, wow, that's a big difference. But then I was like, so smart, and I'm actually okay with it.
Okay.
What you have to, realize is SeaWorld, it's one place. And I think it was perfectly put when someone asked about menus, how menus are going to be handled at sit-down restaurants. And the SeaWorld guy was basically like, we got the one sit-down restaurant, so we're all right. Universal is very unique in the sense that there's a parking garage that you enter, right? There's a parking garage that you park in. No matter what section in that parking garage you go in, you get funneled into one specific place to go to City Walk, to go to Islands of Adventure, to go to Universal Studios Florida. No matter where it is, you got to go into one place. SeaWorld's the same thing. One parking lot to get into the one park. They have other water parks and stuff, but the main gate, it's right there. Disney, as you know, is not like that. Not only are there many ways to get into property, but there are many ways to navigate to the theme parks, to enter themes, to get to the resort hotels. There's so much that has to be put in place that this month, and then when I registered July, it was opening. I'm cool with that because if this means getting their ducks in a row and having a smoother opening, I think that's going to go a long way in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I heard the July 11th date, I did the same thing as you. I saw June. That's in my mind. I was thinking just like, oh, it makes sense with everybody else. It's gonna, we're all gonna come together at the same time. Which, when you think about it, a bunch of theme parks all in the same area open at the same time, probably not the best decision. So Disney decides to go the route. And when you really start to sit back and think of the scale of Disney World, and 2 water parks, 4 theme parks, countless resort rooms and hotels, transportation out the wazoo. That's a lot of things moving in and out that are really hard to contain. And I understand where they're coming from with the delay, but there's still part of me that's like, does it need to take that long? I guess. And we'd love to hear from people out there that are watching right now. What are your opinions about this? This is from the guy, WDW Opinion. So he wants to hear your opinion. So let us hear from you what you think about it. But, do you think it's a little overcautious to not open till July 11th?
I don't think you can be overcautious in what we're dealing with, just because there's no way to be 100% safe. We hear one thing about, COVID-19, and then 2 weeks later it changes.
Right.
Of course, Disney is going to be as cautious as humanly possible. But I know in many ways they can kind of sit back and wait. I think they have, more market share than the others, that when they do open, right, Universal and SeaWorld might have gotten those guests in the couple weeks where Disney wasn't open. But in the grand scheme of things, I think Disney, they still have their legacy cemented as that.
Right.
People are still going to go there first and foremost. And then the other twos are gonna factor into their vacations. But another aspect that I like is the fact that they are letting Universal, SeaWorld, that great place on I-4, Fun Spot America, my God, and Legoland, places like that take the lead on this, because then, listen, there's no doubt in my mind that Disney's going to put people in Universal on the 5th, or if there's pass holder previews, they're going to be in there at that time too, scouting it out, pretending to be guests, looking at stuff. And then they're also going to hear feedback from people who have been there, other cast members that have been there. So that's fine for Universal and for SeaWorld to kind of, lead the cause, because Disney's going to learn from them, and they're going to hopefully implement stuff and change, up the procedures on the fly before that July 11th time period.
Yeah, and I think Walt Disney World and the Disney company is in a better position to be a little bit more cautious. I think obviously we're not dumb here. Some of this is financially driven. The reason that some people are opening up a little quicker than others. So Disney is fortunate that they're able to sit back for a little bit and watch, analyze, learn. And if something bad happens, then you don't take the hit for it. Unfortunately, if that's, just the reality of it is that something could go wrong, and this could have been way too early. And then they're not taking the brunt of a spike or something like that if it were to be traced back to the opening of theme parks. There's a lot of moving parts at play here that could work in Disney's favor or against Disney's favor. The time for that to be figured out is coming. So let's talk a little bit more about what you can expect at Disney World. What do you think about wearing masks in Florida all the time?
I'm here in Maryland. Wearing a mask is difficult for sure. And it's actually, Kyle, you don't have glasses like normally, do you?
No, I don't.
Yeah, it's horrific wearing it with glasses, because basically what happens is you got the mask and it just steams up. So you can't see anything. So, I have a couple trips coming up to Disney World. I still plan on going. I have contacts, so that's going to be good. Disney knows that this is going to be a problem because they've already said we're looking into, creating these relief areas. So it's basically kind of like you can sit down, take a mask off within the park, get some deep breaths in, and then go about your day. I'm okay with it. I think this is where we start to get into the I'm not going to spend the whole day there sort of thing, right? I'm going to probably get in, spend a couple hours there. I'm going to be more exhausted than I typically am, and then I'm going to leave. But these kind of restrictions, these kind of policies are also why when people say, we're planning our once in a lifetime trip, I can't justify them going, in the near future at all with that. And there's some other restrictions we'll talk about, but I think that first thing of you don't know, and I would hate for someone who has like a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, who just they can't wear those masks. I mean, for that long, and that could be a nightmare scenario.
Yeah, two things I picked up out of there I would like to touch on is the relief stations. That actually was kind of, I know that probably came out about the same time as the announcement plans of how things were going to go, but I didn't pick up on that part of it until the last couple of days here, that the relief zones are what they're calling are going to be available. So this is all, as we said, a learning game for Disney. They're going to figure out what works, what doesn't, and then try to make it the best experience possible for those people in the park. So I'm encouraged that they're aware this is a big ask, but they're doing the most that they can to make the experience as magical as possible for the guests. The other thing is the first trip ever, your first trip in a decade, for that type of scenario. So Jessica and I are taking some of our family members. Most have been with us in recent years, but they don't go every year like we do. One particular member in our party, I don't think has been in the last decade and a half, something like that. So pretty fresh for them. And we're having to balance the decision now. Do we go and spend the money when they're not going to get to see some things, as you said, we'll talk about in a second, that aren't being normally offered? They're having to deal with a mask, all that stuff. So that's a tough call for people that are trying to decide, do I still go to this awesome place if I have to put up with these things? How do you feel about balancing that decision for people?
Yeah, it's something you have to reflect upon within your Disney fandom, I'll say, because I think for you and me, I'm a type of guy who I go multiple times a year, right? I've obviously lived there for a year. I'm the type of Disney fan, and I've reached this point in my fandom where being there is what I look forward to the most. It's not riding this roller coaster. It's not experiencing this show. It's not dining at this dining establishment. It's being there. It's being surrounded by the atmosphere. Yes, by the other, guests as well, even if they have masks on. It's about being there, and that's what I feel, So if I go down there and I'm unable to ride any attractions, I'm still going to have a great time. If you're in the, bucket of I'm going down there to ride attractions. I need that. I'm going down there to experience everything. This is not going to be the time for you to go. And I think in a lot of ways, Disney is extending that date for the July opening so that people can kind of start to think, man, we got to do X, we got to do Y, we got to do Z, and they don't have these things open. Maybe, it's almost like Disney is giving people an out. Yeah.
So the big thing that I'm thinking about for things you'd be missing out on for a person who doesn't go as often as you and I might do is the fireworks. To me, Disney is not done without seeing fireworks or some time of nighttime experience. It doesn't have to be fireworks. It can be just spending an evening strolling through Pandora. I mean, how awesome is that now? I could spend hours in there just wandering, looking at every little nook and cranny of how they tried to recreate the nighttime atmosphere of Pandora from the world of Avatar. So they're cutting hours in terms of how late you can stay there. And we know that in the summer in the South and Southeast, the sun stays up until midnight, basically. I'm not really, but it feels like it sometimes.
It's humanly possible, yeah.
Yes. So you're not really getting that nighttime experience. You're not getting the parade. You're not getting the fireworks. So really, it kind of comes down to what you said. you've got to really want to go to just be there to soak up the rest of the atmosphere. And for someone like me, yeah, I'll do that every day and twice on Sunday. But fireworks, I think, are the way you wrap up a day at Disney, and it kind of wraps those feelings. Even for the biggest cynic out there who's just going along with his family to Disney World, I've seen it myself. People standing there with me, and we're just kind of like, oh, I'm having a good time. But that moment those fireworks come over that castle, that music's playing in the background, they get it. Even for a second, they get it. So to me, that's a hard thing to give up, fireworks. What's your impression on them not doing those?
It's going to be weird because there's not going to be a period, right? An end to the day. It's just going to kind of stop, right? Even in Animal Kingdom, you have Rivers of Light in a way, or a Tree of Life Awakenings. Rivers of Light, I mean, we can't recommend it, right? It's
you know what? I will say this. I was sour on Rivers of Light until they added the Lion King part of it. And I was like, okay, this is a little better, but not. I won't rush to see it. If it's available, I'll go in. But just to not sorry to interrupt. But
no. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, just because I've only seen it once, and I was like, oh boy.
Which one did you see? The Jungle Book, the main version, or the Lion King version?
It was very close into the Jungle Book and main version, so it wasn't like full Jungle Book. I think it was pretty much as close to the main version as it could have been, but. Yeah.
I saw the last night, like the cast members were all out celebrating everything too, of the Jungle Book version of it. So I've seen all three. The Jungle Book is obvious version of it was the best, which is ironic because it was a placeholder because they didn't have it ready in time.
Sinking, yes, all the floats kept sinking to the bottom of the water. Yeah.
I guess if you have things on water, they need to float, right?
If anyone's going to make it work, sinking boats, that'd be Disney. Yeah.
But yeah, so there's no period, as you said. So, for you, I think obviously that's maybe not a deal breaker for going to Disney, but for some other people, it's probably going to be they can't have the period to the end of their day. I don't think they're going to go.
Yeah. But also let's remember that Disney did also announce that June 22nd, I believe, all Disney Vacation Club resorts and Fort Wilderness Cabin and Campgrounds Resort, those will all be opening. So when we think of, the diehard fans, those are the DVC people. Those are the Disney Vacation Club people. Those are the people that are going to go whenever the gates are open. So I think Disney still anticipates that. And we know they've been doing surveys. We know that they've been asking, would you come to Disney World if this was in place, if this was in place, if this was in place? So I think with all of that, Disney really is just double downing on that DVC kind of component and just hoping, we're super limited, but the people that come all the time hopefully will still continue to come in this weird kind of phase we're in.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to bring up is social distancing squats. When you hear that,
a role I was born to play, but just in normal life, like outside, stay away from me, people,
I've got this window. Don't come in my bubble. Nobody come in here.
Distance.
That when you first hear it, for some people sounds a little, how do we say this? A little not invasive. I'm struggling with the word to think of. Maybe a little too restrictive, I think, for some people. But then the brilliance of Disney. How do you enforce social distancing? You use what's in your tool belt. Stormtroopers. Who is going to deny being told to do something by a stormtrooper at Walt Disney World? Nobody, I don't think.
But let's also, remember, so Disney Springs has been open for a couple weeks, and they put stormtroopers in Disney Springs, on the catwalks above the stores and stuff like that to be like, hey, keep the distance, like Kyle was saying. I don't really recall stormtroopers ever being there other than an opening of like the Void or something like that, a specific store opening. So for them to take those characters out of where they're supposed to be, for them to break down those walls, which Disney has been for years so against, like, no, this is where the stormtroopers are, we have them, they might be marching down Hollywood Boulevard, but that's not the point. And taking them completely out of the parks and putting them into Disney Springs, Those sorts of things, I believe, are what's going to continue to happen. There's still going to be normal cast members around, hey, could you keep your distance? Hey, remember to put your face coverings on and things like that. But I mean, if, you're walking somewhere and Maleficent tells you, keep the distance, I think we're all going to listen to her, probably.
Disney is the master of turning what could be a very uncomfortable or bad situation into a magical experience in some way. So when I saw them utilizing the stormtroopers in that way, I was like, okay, they've won me over on this aspect of it. So it seems like each time there might have been a part of the plans that I was not so favorable about. There was a way I could, again, have my faith restored in Disney to see how they're trying their hardest to do what's right for the public in general, in terms of making this safe, but also making their guests feel like they're still getting a quality experience. And really, it just comes down to you, the consumer. Then you have to decide whether now is the right time for you, for safety reasons, but also the right time for you in terms of, will I get the experience that I'm expecting out of this? So we're going to do one more last call here for anybody that's watching. I know we've got a few people watching. If you have a question or comment about what we've been talking about here, we're going to be wrapping up soon. Just drop it there in the chat window, and we'll address it here. Even if it doesn't even have to be about this specific topic, if you got a question for Connor about his podcast or anything like that, now's the time to start getting those in. So Connor, if you had to wrap up your opinions of how things look like for the beginning of reopening at Walt Disney World, just kind of give me your overall impression of it.
I hate the phrase the new normal, because this isn't the new normal. We might have to deal with this for a little bit, but I think the end goal is always getting back to what we used to do. We might have new things in place, here on out. We might have a bigger emphasis on things like mobile ordering, on, virtual queues might start to become a bigger thing than they were before. Overall, I'm just really optimistic. I think even now, Disney World opening its gates is a good thing. We need a little magic. We need a little happiness in the world, of course. And even though, Kyle and I have been talking about, hey, if, you're taking that once in a lifetime trip, if you're celebrating something special, maybe push it off until next year. Or if you're a person who really just wants to ride all the attractions, now's not the best time to go, probably. But I would also say now might be the best time to go, even if you want to do all of that, because it's kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel, right? It's that shining, beacon of hope in many regards that, man, there's just been so much stuff going on in the world. And even if you can escape to Disney World, it might not be the Disney World that you've come to know and love, but I think it'll still be pretty awesome, especially these last few months we've been going through have been pretty tough.
And I think, too, something I want to point out is for you, and I think you can agree with this as a former cast member, is I have found, at least in my personal experience, when times were slower, or maybe the conditions at Walt Disney World weren't favored, meaning obviously the 1,000 rainstorms they get during the day and crowds bleed out there, I have found I've had some of the best cast member experiences there, where they go out of their way to create a magical moment for you, whether that be a simple smile, or we have been brought into attractions that were opening up months down the way and said, we're doing a soft opening. Do you want to come check this out? I saw Belle's Enchanted Tales before anybody else had seen it, simply because we were like the only ones in PhilharMagic. And they were like, well, thanks for coming in here. Come check this thing out. So I think you would agree that cast members are going to go out of their way to make this pretty awesome for people.
Yeah, and let's think about, the capacity that they're going to put in the parks as well. They're coming up with a reservation system. So basically, you have to get a reservation in order to get into the park. If you have a hotel reservation or annual pass holder or DVCs, they're going to give priority to those people, with, resort guests being the top level. But they're limiting it in that regard, so they can cap the amount of people that are going to be in a park every single day. Less people in the park means more opportunity to interact with the cast members, to maybe go on some attractions, to experience other things. So I think that's a really cool thing that could kind of be like a happy accident in all of this craziness.
What I'm imagining now is an endless supply of Dole Whips coming from Aloha Isle over there in Adventureland. That's what I'm imagining.
They forgot to change up the orders, so they got the Christmas time orders. So much ice cream coming in, they got to get rid of it.
Yeah, they do. Real quick, Allie Rose, one of our regulars here, she said, planning my trip in January, wonder what it would be like at that point. My impressions of that, Allie, it's still too far off to know. My hope is that we would see some of these restrictions lifted by then. But you have to remember, this is a cold part of the year. This is where viruses and things start kicking up, regardless of what it is anyway. So I think it's probably just a hold and see pattern for that type of January-ish time frame right now. What do you think about that, Connor?
I don't know if you've been following, like, my college put out, their plan for next year. What's going to happen is kids are going to go back in August like they always do. They're going to go through the entire year or that semester. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to go home for Thanksgiving. When they go home for Thanksgiving, they're not coming back for the rest of the semester. They're going to shift to online classes. And that's kind of happening across the board. The reason is, the medical experts are saying if a second wave is going to hit, that's going to be the time that it is. Here's hoping that it doesn't, but you just have to keep those things in mind. And what I will say to Allie is Disney has been so incredibly accommodating with shifting dates, with, transferring things. I think if these restrictions are still in place, then Disney is going to give you that opportunity to continue to reschedule and things like that. Yeah. And so hopefully that's what it is. I'm kind of with Kyle. I think where I see happening in January, I would like to see, some restrictions lifted, whatever those restrictions might be. But that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go about this, is to be optimistic and hope for the best, but just be prepared that things may be different and they have to adjust accordingly. So real quick, Connor, as we wrap up here, I want you one more time, just plug your stuff for those people that maybe popped in late or that may have missed the beginning, your podcast, book, and your YouTube channel, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Yep. So it's WDW Opinion. You can see it on the bottom of the screen there, right next to my name. We're a blog. We have a podcast, and, we are starting on YouTube as well. So make it super easy. Just go to WDWopinion.com. Up at the top, you can see the blog, the podcast, all that stuff. The podcast, I think Kyle and I were talking about this before. We have this fun series going on right now. It's called the Disney Daily Budget Series.
Yes.
The premise is basically, you have a certain amount of money. What are you going to do with that money in the park for one day? So our first episode was $100. You can only spend $100. What are you going to do with that $100 to eat, to experience cool things, to do backstage tours, to get souvenirs? What are you going to do in each of the 4 theme parks? The next episode was $300 a day. We have another episode coming out soon that's going to be an even higher amount. So we like to have, fun shows like that on the podcast. So it would be very cool if you listened and, let us know what you think.
Yeah, it's a really cool series. It got me thinking and start looking at some prices online. I was like, oh, I can eat that. I can't eat that. That's going to go over budget. So that's mainly where my mind went. Not so much experience as what foods can I pile into my mouth and how many Dole Whips can I get in working here in between. So it's a cool series.
Thank you. Yeah. What we were able to realize is, we have these budgets, $100 and $300, but in some cases it was like really hard for us to hit. So we were trying to stretch that money as much as possible, but we still got so much out of it. So hopefully there's some good ideas and good tips in those episodes.
Some really good ones. You guys need to pay attention. If you're just now subscribing to them, what you need to do, you need to go back and listen to the first episode, the second episode, and the ones that are coming out as well. Allie says, buy 10 Dole Whips or LeFou's Brews for $100. That's one way to go about it.
That is one way. Yeah. I had a roommate who, he worked at Gaston's Tavern, and I like LeFou's Brew. I think it's pretty good. My favorite part is the marshmallow topping.
Yeah.
They consider the marshmallow topping, and I was just like, dude, you got to get me one of those cans. I know that it comes in like a Ready Whip can. Just get it to me. And
just whatever you got to do, get it to me.
He's like, I'm sorry, I don't think we can do it. Because if you go in there, I'm not saying that I've done this. I heard from a friend that you can't order it without the topping. And you also can't just be like, can I have a cup of just the topping? They won't give it to you. That's the only Disney magic they won't do in there. So I was riding them pretty hard. I'm like, dude, you got to give me some of that topping. You know,
the stories you hear from former cast members always entertains me. But hey, Connor, thank you so much for joining us here on this Monday night show. We've been wanting to get a lot more conversations about Disney park stuff in our YouTube channel lately. And so you filled a void tonight that has been very much needed, especially during a very interesting time in the news cycle for Disney. So thank you so much for being my guest tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kyle. And I was very, very excited to join you, and I had a fun time here tonight.
Well, appreciate that, man. Thank you all for joining us, listeners, whether you're watching this again live or in replay. Appreciate those that join us live, but even those that join or watch this replay as well. So thank you all again. Until we assemble again, may the force be with you, and we'll see you real soon.